How did the legislative veto influence the War Powers Resolution? Imagine a scenario where the United States Congress seeks to assert its authority over military actions initiated by the executive branch. This tension between the legislative and executive branches has shaped the way the nation handles the power to engage in armed conflicts. To understand this dynamic, it is essential to explore the historical context and the legislative tools involved. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, the United States was involved in complex military engagements, such as the Vietnam War. Congress was increasingly concerned about the president's ability to commit troops without sufficient oversight or approval from the legislative branch. In response, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution of 1973, a law designed to check the president's power to involve the United States in hostilities without congressional consent. The legislative veto was a mechanism that allowed Congress to review and potentially block executive actions without needing to pass new legislation. It was used in various contexts to exert influence over executive decisions, including military operations. However, the legislative veto faced significant legal challenges because it was seen as infringing upon the constitutional powers granted to the president as commander-in-chief. The influence of the legislative veto on the War Powers Resolution was profound. The resolution explicitly aimed to limit the president's ability to deploy troops without congressional approval by requiring the president to consult with Congress and to report within 48 hours of committing armed forces. If Congress disapproved, it could pass a concurrent resolution to withdraw support, effectively ending the military engagement. However, the effectiveness of the War Powers Resolution was hampered by the legal questions surrounding the legislative veto. The Supreme Court, in the case of United States versus Congress, ruled in 1973 that the legislative veto provisions in the War Powers Resolution were unconstitutional because they violated the doctrine of separation of powers. This decision meant that Congress could not unilaterally block presidential military actions through legislative vetoes. Despite this setback, the War Powers Resolution remained a symbolic assertion of congressional authority over military engagements. It increased awareness and debate about the balance of power between the legislative and executive branches. The law's existence prompted presidents to be more transparent about military operations and to consult Congress more frequently, even if the veto mechanism itself was invalidated. In summary, the legislative veto initially influenced the development of the War Powers Resolution by inspiring Congress to craft legislation that sought to limit presidential war-making powers. However, the legal invalidation of the legislative veto by the Supreme Court ultimately shaped the resolution's practical impact, emphasizing the ongoing struggle to define the boundaries of presidential and congressional authority in matters of war.